Welcome to another presentation of the Globe Sound Healing Conference. Today's presenter is Dr. Jeffrey Thompson. Hi, Jeff. Oh, you're muted. Oh, you're still muted. Oh, I can't hear you.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Okay, great. Okay.
Hit the mute button.
How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm ready to go.
Cool.
I'm always happy to be part of. It's still a part of anything you put together. It's always fine with me. I'll be here I, I still, I have a hard time getting two people over for dinner. I can't imagine how you do this thing.
Yeah, it's kind of shortened my life a little bit, you know. But there's other aspects of it that has lengthened my life dramatically, right? Okay, so here's your bio. Dr. Thompson has worked with Deepak Chopra, has created many self-improvement tapes with Louise Hay, and has created sound programs for conferences with Bernie Siegel, Barbara Max Hubbard, Brew Joy, and Susan Jeffers. He has worked with NASA and JPL with plasma wave audio recordings from Voyager 1 and 2 and researched their effects on the subconscious mind for healing and emotional release. His work has been part of research projects at the Neuropsychiatric Center at UCLA and has been researched at the Royal Ottawa Sleep Research Center in Canada, as well as multiple other companies who license his sounds to complement and empower their offering to society. His work was chosen to be part of the nationally funded Center for the Study of Complementary and Alternative Therapies program at Duke University and the University of Virginia in the 1990s. His audio programs have been and are used with patients before and after surgery and in various oncology infusion departments and clinics. His patented neuroacoustic vibroacoustic sound chair and sound table are used in medical and mental health clinics, wellness spas, professional and business offices, personal fitness clubs, and homes. He's played an active role in the Complementary Alternative Medicine Research and Therapy Association at Scripps Hospital, San Diego, California. He continues to work with Fortune 500 and 100 companies and other businesses as time permits. So it seems like you've kind of like had a full life. It's like really you've done a lot to really help a lot of people here. I mean, is there anything else are we going out to pasture, or is there anything else you want to do to change the world? It's amazing what you've done.
Geez, listening to that, I should have been treating myself with more respect all this
Yeah, I like reading my bone bio sometimes. Like, whoa, what I did that, right? Yeah,
Indeed, you always look better on paper, So,
right.
I mean, it's kind of you keep your nose to the grindstone for long enough, and pretty soon you've got a cool resume. And it didn't all happen at once. It just, there's this other phenomenon which is. The formula of life is sort of 1% the courage to step forward through the door that the universe is opening for you, and the rest of it is serendipity. It's just, the universe kind of puts the people in your face and opens the doors and turns the light green, and hopefully you're in a place in your life where you can, meet that call and step into it. And the more you learn how to do that, the more amazing it all gets. It becomes this story that Hollywood would reject because it's too impossibly ridiculous to believe.
Right.
And one day you just look at your life and go, how the heck did I get here? I mean, people usually ask me, how did you get involved with this? And I'm going, oh my God, how many days do you have for me?
Right.
I went to art school. I've got a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree. I've been a musician, an artist, and a filmmaker. How the hell did I end up here? I don't know. I mean, it was serendipity.
I think if we could teach people one thing, and that is it's all taken care of. Of course, you have to get out of bed and do a little work here and there, but it's all taken care of, and then people could relax. There's nothing more important than that right there.
You have to have, periodically, you have to put your foot forward at the critical time, not shy away from it. Sometimes, it's, for instance, at a critical point for me when I was thinking of going to chiropractic school. So now I'm an artist, a filmmaker, a musician, and living in a barn I renovated in upstate New York. In the middle of wintertime, I'm talking myself out of going to Iowa to chiropractic school because I've got too much stuff. How am I going to move all this stuff to Iowa? How am I going to make first and last month rent? How am I going to buy school textbooks, right? So the answer was, burn your house down. And the money is just enough to go to school and travel light.
Wow.
So, you got to be careful when the universe is saying, pay attention to this door that I'm opening for you because it's a really important one. Don't shy away from this, or we're going to force you to walk through it.
Right. And we may hit you in the butt on the way too if you don't
Yeah.
go in the first place. So, okay, so I was just thinking, of the things in the world that I think we could help is really for healing or raising consciousness. And, so you're working on both, right? It's like, it seems like if we could raise consciousness, which, when I say that, some people go, what the hell does that mean, right? Where it's where you can access these higher states where all is known. That's probably the simplest, right? Then, then healing happens on its own. So it's like do you see one more important than the other, or just we just got to do both as much as we can?
I think they're intimately related. So the biggest or the deepest healing responses that I see uh, with patients is so the people will go through various sort of detoxifications, physical detoxifications of releasing toxins that have been stuck and stored, traumatic emotional states that get released, self-defeating belief systems in my mind that get released. But the deepest one is a sort of a spiritual revelation where each of us is fated to walk this path that comes to a fork, and then I'm fated to make a free will decision. Which fork am I going to take? And one of those is my heart is telling me to go there. My intuition is saying go there. My joy is telling me to go there. But I can't see how that's going to make it work for me. But on the other hand, uh, you know, slough off the fancies of youth and get a job.
Right.
Yeah,
Like,
this way you get a
like
job.
mom said.
It looks like you've got a logical path of how you're going to make your life work that way. And unfortunately, the when you make that decision and you step out of the path that the universe has in store for you, that's when I see the pain begins and the disease begins in your soul.
Mm.
The more I make that left path instead of the right one, the more I abandon the search for why I'm here, what my life is all about. Why did the universe invent me? What's my talents? Why am I here? What am I supposed to be doing? I've abandoned that and I got a job instead.
Right.
Um, when when I get to that fork and I make the right decision, so when people teleport back and relive this experience, the very first time you ever made that left fork decision instead of the right one,
Hmm.
it's always based on fear. I don't know how I'm going to make this work. How can I make the right path work? I
Hmm.
can't figure it out. I'm afraid I'm not going to make it that way.
Hmm.
And underlying that fear is something deeper. It's
Right.
my basic belief system about me and the universe. Is the universe a hostile environment that I have to fight tooth and claw for my little spot and then defend that? Or is the universe a beneficent place whose sole purpose is to empower me when I make the right decision for the path of my soul?
Right.
And when my small mind comes in and says, I don't know how I'm going to make that work, excuse me, that was never your job in the first place to figure that out. Your job was to make a dumbed down decision of this way or this way. And when I make the right path decision, the universe's job is to step forward and open the doors and
Right.
introduce me to just the people I need to know, and on and
What
on.
What's really cool is when you start using your mind to build structures on the way to what the universe is guiding you to, right? So now the two have come together, right? And then it's like it's you may be homeless a few years, but you're but you will be blissed out later.
It is. I mean, so on the other hand, the at a certain point, you're no longer a broken person trying to get fixed.
Hmm.
You're a fixed person asking, now what? And I
Nice.
think that's where you've reached the crux of where human beings have been asking that question since the beginning of time. And I think sound has been used as the premier tool to help that process to find out why I'm here and what I'm supposed to be doing.
Right.
Meditation. So meditation itself is a tool. It's
I'm
somebody,
okay. I'm okay. It's the whole deal.
and so then if somebody comes up, some monk from a few thousand years ago, the very first guy who comes out, with one of these from behind some monastery, he's tinkered away and he's made this little thing. When you rub it with the stick, the sound comes out, and everybody goes, "Oh, that brings me there faster." You just invented a high-tech tool, right? The super high-tech tool 3,000 years ago. Now we've got ultra super high-tech tools. We've got that keyboard you've got next to you there, right? So that thing can generate. You can microtune between C and C sharp by 100 steps with a readout on that thing.
Mhm.
That means it's elevated beyond a rock and roll keyboard to an extremely precise scientific instrument for producing sound frequencies accurate to a couple of decimal
Yeah.
points. Like
Take
sitting
it to
in
the
the
next
room.
level where you can actually find your central processor frequency that will be the frequency that harmonizes every system in your whole body.
Or a frequency for your liver, or a frequency for your kidney, or a
Right.
frequency for your emotions, or a
Right.
frequency for a certain state of mind that is exhibited on EEG. If we can measure EEG over here and see what enlightenment looks like, we can use brain entrainment over here and bring you to the water. Can't make you drink,
Right.
but
Right.
we can stack the deck in our favor.
Right. I always say the more ways you bring a horse to the water, the more chances it'll drink.
Now, we can always hold his nose and pour water down.
Right, right, right. Okay, so I love it. We could just. Oh, I think you're supposed to have a presentation today, so we could talk all day.
Could just talk all day with you. So,
Right.
but yeah, I've got my little presentation I'll do here.
So what is it? What is your presentation about today?
Um, I'm covering the basics of how sound can be used in a clinical way to heal and also to deepen consciousness. So those two are deeply related. For instance, if I've got a lot of physical baggage and imbalances and emotional baggage, I don't want to sort of bring that into etheric realms in higher states of meditation. So it'd be better to balance all those systems out and make myself clean so that now it's easier and better, and I got all that energy to use to deepen my meditation. So
Nice, nice.
it's
Doesn't
sort
get
of
in the
my
way.
um, where the two worlds sort of come together.
Cool.
The basic foundation of how sound is used and the sort of the physics and the anatomy and physiology of why it would even work is something that's fascinating in itself.
Cool. Okay. Well, go ahead and begin. I'm gonna turn off my sound and video so you can turn on the original sound.
Yeah, let me get back to that. So, original sound on. So, um, with that being said, uh, I'm involved in all of these different sort of magazines and news feeds. I try to monitor as much of what's going on as I can in anatomy and physiology and quantum physics and things like that. I'm always looking to see what's the cutting edge of what's going on, particularly with EEG research or anything to do with cosmology and quantum physics and how it relates to sound. The first thing to realize is that, when I went to high school, we were taught that everything in the universe is photons and the electromagnetic spectrum. And there was these kind of charts that we looked at. It was kind of a big chart that showed low frequency electromagnetic resonances that would speed up and speed up and speed up and go across this whole range where it would be television and then radio signals and ultrasound and x-ray, and way up here is a little pi wedge of color frequencies, and it keeps going on until it becomes gamma rays and cosmic rays. And that was what all of us were taught is all of this is made of. But what was not taught is that sound waves are different than that. Sound is the only thing in the universe that is not on the electromagnetic spectrum. Sound is unique and different. It's not electromagnetic. Sound is mechanical energy waves moving through a medium at a certain frequency. So actually sound is pure energy moving through a medium at a certain frequency. And the mediums usually here on Earth is air molecule resonance and fluids like water. Sound travels through water 5 times better than it does through air. And sound travels through a solid 5 times better than it does through water. So your body is a perfect mechanism for accomplishing this, because 70% of my body is water and 30% is bone, minerals, microtubules, a bunch of other things. Perfect medium for transmitting sound. And this idea that there's a yin-yang in the universe here, where one is electromagnetism and the other is this idea of sound. But in reality, you need to strip that word away, because sound is only a narrow little tiny portion of this resonance phenomenon that is separate from electromagnetism. Between 20 and 20,000 hertz, we've got this little mechanism we invented to pick up resonating air molecules. We call that sound. But when the vibrational frequencies go below 20 hertz, then this mechanism doesn't work anymore. But this one does. Our vibrational sense network, right? The skin, the largest sense organ in your body, has these little sense organs in it that are sensitive to vibration frequencies. And there's 4 of them, sensitive each one to a different vibrational range. And when you add all 4 of those up together, you've got 0.3 to 500 hertz. That's what this system, the vibration sense network, considers to be vibration frequencies that we can feel. Even if you're deaf, you can feel these frequencies, 500 hertz and down to 0.3 hertz. That's how Beethoven heard his last 3 symphonies after he went deaf. I mean, think about that. One of the most famous composers in the world went deaf and made 3 symphonies afterwards, and he heard those symphonies by putting his head on the grand piano and hearing through bone conduction. Like that one behind me there, that piano behind me there. If I start banging the keys, put my head on the piano, I can hear it through bone conduction, through the vibration sense network. And when the frequencies go above 20,000 hertz, then we have these mechanical energy waves that are spreading out through the cosmos, and we're feeling those in different ways. We're feeling them as heat. The main transmitter of heat in the universe is vibrational frequencies, not electromagnetism. And there's indications that are a deeper issue, where we have something called sonoluminescence. So you should try to look that word up on a Google search. Sonoluminescence, which is light created from sound. And basically, the experiment is you have this spherical container filled with water, and you've got 2 transducers attached to it, sound transducers, and you calculate the radius of the center point out to the edge of this sphere, and you tune the frequency to that. So the frequency is tuned to the radius of the sphere that holds the water, and now that frequency is put into that water so that the sound waves meet exactly in the middle and crash into each other from these 2 transducers, and that creates a pressure wave. The pressure wave causes a bubble to form in the water, which then collapses. And the collapsing of that is called cavitation. And when that collapses, it collapses with such unimaginable force that it creates photons. It creates creates light, and the brightness of that light challenges our own sun, and the heat of that light challenges the heat of our sun. A star in a jar is what they call that. Light created from sound. So once you have that in place, where you have, galactic-sized gravity waves. They call them gravity waves, but it's waves in space. It's sound waves with the sound word stripped away. It's the mechanical energy waves moving through the universe. You used to call that the vacuum, but it's not a vacuum. We know that's not a vacuum. We know it's a substance. It's 80% of the universe is this, empty, something we can't measure. And at the core of the quantum field, where my body is made of cells, and the cells are made of chemical compounds, and the chemical compounds are made of atoms, and the atoms are made of smaller particles, protons, electrons, and neutrons. And when you zoom in on those and look at them closely, they're not solid either. They're, made of quarks and charms, and those split apart are made of hadrons and leptons, and those split apart are made of Z bosons. And eventually you break to the smallest particle, you break it open. There's nothing inside except energy pattern relationships in a state of vibration, forming standing waves in patterns. Similar to what you see with the early experiments by Hans Jenny with the sand on the plate. I've got some pictures of all this stuff. These ideas and ideas that are even more mind-boggling about the nature of reality at a quantum field and how it exhibits at the core of the quantum field all the properties that we see of sound moving through a fluid, right? A still pool of water with a pebble dropping into it creates these ripple patterns that come out. Those ripple patterns, if you magnify them up until they were the size of 500 galaxies with a giant ripple moving in slow motion, that is what we see in the universe. Evidence of pure energy moving through the medium that we can't measure, that we call, dark matter. Whatever that is, there's something there. And if you go far enough back in time to the most ancient texts on the planet, like the Vedas or the Sutras of Patanjali in Sanskrit from India, almost 4,000 years old, or the oldest text on earth, the I Ching from China, 5,000 years old, talk about exactly these principles. The idea that from the standpoint of the Vedas, what's resonating at the core of the quantum field and forming these, vibrational standing waves is consciousness itself. And what is consciousness doing? What's the ripple? It's an idea. And what's the idea? This is the idea. And the deeper we dig into that, the more profound it gets, where now, international bodies of scientists are talking about reality, is based on consciousness experiencing something. In other words, consciousness now is recognized as a requirement for reality to exist. And the implication of that are gigantic, because it nullifies Newtonian physics. The Newtonian physics, the apple hitting your head and gravity and all that stuff with Isaac Newton, is basically the basic system that we see operating in the world. Scientific circles, modern medicine, based on a Newtonian physics idea that things are solid, things are real, things have their own objective reality, and quantum physics is telling us that's not true. For instance, if all people in the whole universe, all sentient beings, were to disappear, like right now, from a standpoint of Newtonian physics, there would still be planets and nebula and galaxies and star patterns and planets and all the rest. That'll all still be there. But from the standpoint of quantum physics, it would not be there. That it would have a potential to be there, but the potential doesn't pop into reality until consciousness arrives on the scene to witness something taking place. So, the old conundrum of if a tree falls in the forest and there's nobody there, does it make a sound? According to quantum physics, if nobody's there, there's no forest. There's a potential for a forest and a potential for a tree to fall in that forest and make a sound, but not until somebody shows up, and then something pops into existence. This has ramifications for the kind of things like you want to talk about spontaneous remission. One minute I've got cancer, the next minute it's all gone, and the doctors are scratching their heads thinking, maybe I looked at the wrong x-ray, maybe we made some mistake. That's as far as the Newtonian mind can stretch with these ideas. But from a quantum standpoint, this is business as usual. This is daily stuff. This is things come in and out of existence. Time flows forwards and backwards at the same time. It's completely just ordinary, everyday business for things to pop into existence and disappear based on what consciousness it expects to happen, which is pretty profound, which means that if I can get to the right place in myself, in the present moment before a thought, where I stand on the brink of the next moment from now, if I change my idea about what the next moment could be, it would become that. So therefore, my fear of dying with the cancer death sentence teleports some people into the deep regions of themselves where they stand on that brink, and something deep inside stands up and says, no, I don't think so. I don't think I'm going to be the person who has the story where I die of cancer. I think I'll be the person who has a spontaneous remission instead, and bang, it becomes so. Now, sound has stood the test of time in every culture as a primary tool for helping us to get to that place that I'm talking about through a series of stages of ever deepening meditation. And every culture on earth has got some kind of meditation practice that it's invented, because they're all separated from each other and aren't seeing what each other is doing. So there's all these different kinds of meditation practices out in the world that open the door to the big sort of God room, the big God room with a bunch of doors, and each door is a different meditation practice. And we look back upon some of the most profound EEG researchers who've been trying to look into the brain to see, what does the brain look like in these different high states of meditation? What does enlightenment look like in the brain? Hook meditators and yogis and swamis, up to these EEG devices and see what's going on in there. There's very specific things that always go on in there. And it turns out that each of these different types of meditation practices from different cultures have unique brain signatures that arise from that particular type of meditation. Every single type of brain frequency you can think of or know about is its own sort of doorway into higher states. And one of those doorways is perfect for your particular genetic makeup, for the way you are assembled and how you are, has a very perfect doorway that works for it. And that doorway may not be the doorway that you were born into. For me, I was born into a Christian tradition. I was a military kid, so I was, alternately a Protestant and a Presbyterian and a Methodist and a Lutheran and Episcopalian and all these different doorways just within Christianity, So it's a worthy exploration to see that we can hook up people to EEG and see certain brain pictures, and now we've got a new phenomenon using sound, and not just sound, but sound for entraining your brain waves to altered states. And I'm here to kind of discover with you and go over the basics of the anatomy and physiology of how this system works and why sound would have any kind of influence on it, and the physics and quantum physics of sound itself and why it would have an influence on anything. Also, the idea of brain waves and brainwave entrainment and how that whole thing works and how it works in the brain and why it works. And once we understand that, we can now have the tools scientifically to commandeer the system and entrain it to highly desirable states that help me in my healing, help me in my cognitive awareness of myself, boost my IQ, boost my creativity, boost my meditation, boost my self-awareness. Now we've got tools at our disposal that have never been possible before. You know, EEG equipment to see what's going on. Brain entrainment over here to put you wherever we want with a high degree of precision. So those are the kind of things we're going to explore. And before I start, I just want to make sure that you can see the my address here. Here's my my website address, scientificsounds.com. If any of you want to get in contact with me, you can email me at cnrneuroacoustic.com. I also have a series of things going on myself. I have a live stream. If you want to know more about all these sort of crazy ideas that have to do with sound and quantum physics and anything else, I cover that every week in a broadcast. Every Sunday at 12:30 California time. This is where you can go on my YouTube channel to see all the live streams I've done up to this point on all kinds of different topics. And if you want to look me up and follow me on Facebook or my YouTube channel or Instagram, it's basically Dr. Jeffrey Thompson. Check it out. Join me for my live streams. I have quite a number of people following at this point. I think it's 15,000 just in the YouTube channel. So I'm going to cover three basic categories of how I use sound. And a part of it is how we can resonate your physical body with sound waves and certain laws of physics that govern sound, octave and harmonic laws, brainwave entrainment, and this concept of binaural beats and where that came from. And something else that is part of my work that I call primordial sounds, sounds that have the ability to access parts of your unconscious mind through pattern recognition and open something up inside. But with physical resonance, you know, this concept of the wine glass, if, you know, I could sing a certain note and the wine glass is going to vibrate through sympathetic resonance. And once I find the frequency for that wine glass, and by the way, the way that you find the frequency is, you know, you sort of ping the wine glass. So if this was a wine glass, then I would ping that wine glass and hear that note and sing that note. When I ping the wine glass and it makes a sound, that is the fundamental resonant frequency of the glass and that atomic shape, density, and mass. And it's resonating its own fundamental frequency. So if I could sing that frequency, the wine glass would start to vibrate. And any other wine glass in the room that's different shape, density, and mass would not resonate to the one that makes this one resonate, unless they happen to be tuned to an octave or a harmonic frequency of this wine glass. Which brings us up to, you know, this concept of octave resonance and harmonic resonance. So when I ping that wine glass and I sing that note, the wine glass vibrates. If I sing any octave of that note, the wine glass vibrates. If I sing any harmonic of that note, the wine glass vibrates. So an octave is 1/2 the frequency or double the frequency. So if this wine glass was tuned to 400 hertz, then singing 200 hertz would work, 100 hertz would work, 50 hertz would work, 25 hertz would work, right? 800, 1600, 3200, all those frequencies would work. They're all octaves of this note. If I was to calculate fractions of the 400 hertz, 2/3, 3/4, 4/5, 5/6, 6/7, all of those would work. They're harmonics. It's basically mathematical relationships between frequencies form what we know as music theory. So all of the keys on that piano back there, the white and black keys, are tuned to specific frequencies, and those specific frequencies are octaves and harmonics of each other. And therefore, when I hit the single piano key, if I hit the middle A key on that piano, all the other A strings would vibrate with sympathetic resonance based on octave resonance. And all the harmonic thirds and fifth strings would also resonate. So that's why the piano sounds so full. When I just hit one key, this whole thing happens if you really listen to that. And then there was these, experiments done by Hans Jenny using something called a Chladni plate, a scientific experiment with sand particles spread across a metal plate with a speaker attached to the bottom of it. And when you play a certain frequency, it makes the metal plate start to go into a vibrating resonance, and the sand particles all start to coalesce into these patterns of lines. This is an example of a standing wave. These lines look like they're solid, but when you look close enough at them with a magnifying glass, they're not solid at all. It's just dancing sand particles forming along these lines. And the lines are what's called nodes and antinodes. It's the vibration frequencies are making the metal plate ripple, and the ripple pattern is sort of a sine wave. The ripples, the sound waves are rippling, causing it to ripple. And all the sand particles that are on there, the ripple is forming hills and valleys and hills and valleys and hills and valleys, and the sand is falling off the tops of the little mountain peaks and sliding down into the valleys and filling those up. And filling up all the valleys looks like a line. This is sand particles are falling down into the valleys of the vibrational network, where the mountain tops are where there's no sand. And then if I change the frequency a little bit, then this whole sand thing will morph around and turn into another pattern like this one. This is Hans Jenny with his equipment for producing sound waves, and actually right there is his metal plate with the sand on it. So what it means that from a standpoint of physics, every different frequency has a different pattern that shows up. And if I was to scrape all this sand off of here and put a different material on there, like talcum powder or something, he used to use something called lycopodium, which is a super small spore that is kind of like talcum powder. If he spread that on instead of sand and played the same sound frequency, a different pattern would show up. So the same frequency causes different patterns in different materials, and different frequencies form different patterns in the same material. So from a standpoint of a quantum field, this is basically what we're looking at. Standing waves in dark matter. Something is resonating. There's no metal plate there. It's the sort of the dark matter field, and it's a substance, and it's resonating, and it's forming standing waves. And if you back far enough away from those standing waves, it looks like a Z boson. If you zoom back far enough, the Z bosons coalesce into what looks like, a quark or a charm or a proton or a neutron or electron, or you just keep zooming back, it looks like atoms, and atoms coalesce into compounds, and coalesce into cells, and then that looks like you and me. So basically, this is infinite nested standing waves linked together and stacked together based on the law of harmonics and octaves. So when we have two notes on a piano back there that are harmonious to each other, the waves that each forms fit nicely packed within each other, nest together nicely. And our brain can interpret that as pleasing. That's a chord. Disharmonic frequencies don't fit perfectly together. They're slightly off and they bump into each other and create discordant frequencies that are unpleasing. But basically, when I play chords and music, the mathematical relationship of all those frequencies please me, please some place deep down inside of me that is sort of a primordial recognition at an unconscious level of mathematical properties in the laws of music that the deeper part of me who designed the whole universe used that math to design the whole universe, everything in it, including me. So yeah, it's pleasing. It's reiterating a theme that consciousness at its deep level used to manipulate reality based on music theory. Even the atoms in the periodic table are arranged according to harmonic and overtone structures. But here's two different materials on the same sound plate. The lines are formed by sand and the balls are formed by lycopodium. So the more different types of materials I throw on the plate, the more complex and interwoven different patterns are going to show up from different materials with the same frequency. All of it begins here with the science of coupled oscillators. This idea of coupled oscillators is the foundation principle in physics behind sympathetic resonance. Now, this article that came out in 1993 in Scientific American, where they're discussing coupled oscillators and biological synchronization, where essentially everything in the universe is drawn to synchronize together. Why? Because it saves energy to do that. And it's an ecological universe. Everything in the universe is attempting to save energy and get the most work with the least amount of energy expended. And the most prime example of that principle is a biological system that's alive and much more responsive to the environment, because I've got all these processes going on that makes me lickety-split reactive. And the most reactive system in my body is my brain, which drives the system and directs the system and coordinates the system. So brain and brain waves exhibit the finest possible degree of the principle of coupled oscillators. So in my brain, I've got my bioclocks, which are constantly looking in the environment of the most dominant pulses, rhythms in the environment to time my body clocks to, because it saves energy to do that. So I'm drawn to align myself with the most dominant pulses in my environment. So if you're a woman, you have an ovulation every 28 and a half days, because the pineal gland, which is hooked into the bioclocks in the center of your brain, are timing your ovulation to the full moon, new moon cycle of 28 and a half days in order to save energy. So, back to here, where this is the guy who started it all, Christian Huygens, 1665, invented the pendulum clock. And he got sick and he's in bed and he's seeing two of these pendulum clocks have their pendulums in perfect swing with each other, which doesn't make any sense because, they're not mechanically attached to do that. So he pulls one clock and puts it on the other wall and they become random. But when he puts them both on the same wall, within 2 or 3 minutes, they're both swinging in synchrony with each other. And then once they're in sync, they don't go out. And this became the basic foundation of the law of coupled oscillators, this idea that things are looking to swing together. If you do a Google search for coupled oscillators metronomes, you'll see these cool little videos there of 25 metronomes on a board, and they start them all going at random, and you can watch it happen right in front of you. Within a minute and a half, they all start to swing together. All 25 of them end up swinging together. in just a few minutes. It's this foundation principle that's going on. And it's behind the idea of brainwave entrainment, why my brainwaves would entrain to an external sound pulse, or an electromagnetic pulse, or a light pulse. Anything that can create a pulse that is at a brainwave speed, my brainwaves will change from whatever they are to match the external speed and change my consciousness in that process of doing that. So, like I said before, sound waves are pure energy moving through a medium, like air molecule compression waves. Vibration sense of my skin is these 4 skin sensors that are each separate, related to certain frequency vibrations. This chart kind of shows that, although it might be too small for you to see on your screen. Merkel's receptors are sensitive to 0.3 to 3 hertz. Meissner's corpuscles 3 hertz to 40 hertz. Ruffini cylinders is 15 hertz to 400 hertz, and Pacinian corpuscles are 10 to 500 hertz. So altogether, all 4 of those skin sensors are 0.3 to 500 hertz. And they communicate into the posterior spinal cord up to neurons in your brainstem. That's vibration sense, separate from hearing completely. So when I design something like a sound table to deliver, I'm trying to deliver the low frequency resonance range that will excite this vibration sense network, and then put headphones on so that the hearing network is synchronized with that network. So this is the spinal cord cut, so you can see the posterior spinal tracts, which are vibration sense tracts, 5 times larger in surface area than any other sense. And they pass right up the spinal cord into these neurons in your brainstem, where they cross over to the opposite side to the thalamus and then into the brain and get interpreted there. And so the whole purpose of the sound table is to deliver those low frequency sound waves. And it's important that it's delivered with right-left stereo. So my sound tables have got transducers on the right, transducers on the left to match the headphones, so that particularly when I'm talking about binaural beats, when I haven't discussed that yet, but we've got separate frequencies in the left and in the right that are interacting, that's doing something to your brain. So we want that to be reflected in your body as well, so that we synchronize up vibration sense network with hearing network. And these little glasses have lights in them that are driven by the sound that you're hearing. So now we're seeing, which we're hearing, what we're feeling, the 3 primary perceptual modes in NLP. We talk about brain entrainment here. This article right here in 1973 by this guy, Gerald Oster, Auditory Beats in the Brain. He's the one that started the whole movement of brain entrainment with soundtracks. The Navy had made experiments with this back in the 50s with light pulses, pulsing at a brainwave speed, but he's the first one to really put it to a scientific research project. So, the earliest use of binaural beats would have been shamanic drumming practices. And so, of course, I've got my drum here. And so the idea here is that you're going to be pounding a drum at a brainwave speed. So I've done extensive research with this. Recordings, personal recordings, and recordings that are on the market of shamans doing shamanic ceremonies and American Indian drumming practices. And that's about correct. That's about 5 hertz, 5 cycles per second. And 5 cycles per second is a theta brainwave frequency. That's where I go when I'm dreaming. And that means that if I pound that drum at that speed, within a few minutes, your brainwaves, which is always looking for who to time itself to, starts to change its allegiance to this drum beat because it's the most dominant pulse in your environment. And my brainwaves, when I'm awake, are in beta at around 20 hertz, 15 hertz. And they're going to slow down, slow down, and slow down, and slow down through alpha at 13 hertz, down into theta at 7 hertz, and arrive down at this 5 cycle a second drum beat. And that means that I'm putting a person from a waking state into a dream state in a few minutes without going to sleep first. So that's a classic definition of a trance state, altered state, where I'm not dreaming and I'm not asleep, but I'm in this theta zone of 5 hertz, a meditative state. Next question was, would the brainwaves entrain to a phantom pulse, a pulse that's not actually a drum beat? And so he created binaural beats where we have one tone here and another tone here slightly out of tune that creates a beat between them. He used a sine wave because it's a man-made tone with no harmonics, and so for a scientific experiment that's what you would want to use. You're reducing the number of variables. So when we have two speakers and we have 100 hertz and 105 hertz, the air molecule waves that are coming out of those speakers are meeting together in the middle, slightly off by 5 hertz. So they're crashing together 5 times per second. And we hear that as a wah-wah. It's a phantom pulse. Because if I shut one of these speakers off, all I hear is the 105. Bring this 100 back up, and I hear the 5 cycle a second wah-wah. It's a magic act. It's modulation of air molecules. However, once they're modulating at 5 hertz, my brainwaves will treat them as if it's a drum beat and do the same process of slowing down, matching that, and locking onto it. Next step was the mind blower. What happens if you've got headphones on? So now we've got headphones, and we've got 100 and 105. And I'm hearing this 5 cycle a second pulsing, and my brainwaves are entraining to it. Excuse me, though, where is that pulse coming from? Because there's no air waves colliding together between these two speakers. There's a brain in between there, not air molecules. So now what he had succeeded in doing was identifying a true quirk of neurophysiology, which forces the brain into these survival routines that it runs all the time. All my 5 senses are stuck into the world to see if I'm being threatened. All information coming into my brain has to be evaluated. Is this a threat? Is this neutral? Is this good? And if it's the slightest bit of a threat, all my defenses come up. So in this case, there's never a time in all of our biological evolution where one ear hears something where the other one doesn't hear it, because sound disperses everywhere. So the brain is confused, and it's wondering if this might be a threat because it's unknown. I don't know. I've got to evaluate it. So in order to evaluate it, the two hemispheres, which listen to the opposite ears, synchronize across the corpus callosum and compare notes. And when they compare notes, the brain jumps to a conclusion that that wah-wah should be there. The air molecules never actually arrive to make it happen. The brain invents it moment by moment and manufactures it out of nowhere and then entrains to it. So this is an active brain entrainment process, as opposed to a passive one through speakers, where I get the entrainment, but I don't get the synchronicity of the hemispheres, which only happens when the two ears are blocked from hearing what the other one is hearing, forcing the hemispheres to compare notes, manufacture this pulse. Very powerful stuff. And this is precisely what's wrong with certain kinds of neurological conditions, like concussion. You know, I have a big blow to the head and it rattles my brain around. It disrupts all these neural pathways of communication. And now my concentration is blown, and my memory is blown, and my personality begins to change. All weird things start to happen because these pathways aren't communicating. And if I put headphones on with binaural beats and this happens, I just lit up all those pathways that don't work. And now if I use it every single day, I'm going to a gym for pathways. I'm going every time I put these on, these open up, and every time these open up every day, the pathways open up more and more and more and get more robust, and I'm just fixing that problem. ADD, ADHD, dyslexia, autism, epilepsy, all of these conditions have the same underlying element as part of their condition, and this as a clinical way of helping those conditions is very profound and powerful. I use it in my clinic all the time. For 40 years I've been doing this, so it works. Just, the idea of two speakers with 100 and 105 hertz, the crossover zone we hear is a 5 hertz thing. That causes the entrainment. But it's different if these are headphones. This is manufactured by the brain. So, like I said, people in every culture have been using sound as a tool, and particularly Tibetan bowls is one of the ones that everybody knows about. I just happen to have a bunch, as any self-respecting sound therapist would do, right? You have these bowls, and the bowls are mostly either bronze or brass. At one point when I was a sculptor, I did, cast metal molding. I had a whole period when I was an alchemist with metals, so I know about alloys. I know how to make alloys. These, this is 97% copper, and if it's brass, it's about 2 3/4% tin. If it's tin, it's bronze. If it's zinc, it's brass. And so this one is bronze. You can tell by the color. It's more gold. The brass is more sort of white gold. These are all bronze, these kind. And it gives it a certain type of nice ring. So if I rub this, so it has this really nice tone that's centering. But within that tone, there's a pulsing. If you listen carefully, and that pulse is a brainwave speed. This particular one is upper theta, and it's the pulse that's doing the work. That's why these help with meditation. The sound of the brass or the bronze helps to center you, but the pulse within is driving your brainwaves into a certain state. So that's how you tell the good bowls from the bad ones. Here's a 6-inch bowl. This is a bit slower of a theta frequency. Those are both good. The bowls that you don't want have extremely rapid beta frequency. That's not going to put you into a meditation state. It will help you maybe concentrate. But, every time I think I've got, I'm in my cutting edge digital recording studio with all kinds of equipment and doing brain entrainment things and EEG and all the rest, and I'm really proud of myself until I realized that the Tibetans did it all 3,000 years ago. They knew about this brain entrainment thing even then. Pretty amazing. It's just sort of mind-blowing. You can also take some of these digital keyboards or sampling keyboards. You can plug a microphone in the back and you can record any sound as a digital recording, and you can stick it across the keys, and the keyboard now will play those sounds. So I could take a Tibetan bowl like this and record it into my keyboard and assign it this sound to middle C, and when I pressed middle C on the keyboard, it would play back a recording of this Tibetan bowl. So now I've got a Tibetan bowl symphony on my keyboard. Any note I hit will speed it up or slow it down by the amount you hit exactly that note. And if I take that 6-inch bowl and play it an octave lower, I've got a bowl that's twice the diameter, a 12-inch bowl, a 24-inch bowl, 48-inch bowl. I did a lot of that kind of stuff, and I put it on recordings and have it on my website. If you have headphones, which I recommend because some of these frequencies are really low and you can't play them through your laptop or your phone or something. But I have an example here of Tibetan bowls that I did just that with. See if I can find it here. So I've got the 6-inch bowl spread across the keys, and I'm playing in all kinds of different octaves, and I'm playing some of them as melodies. Lasts for about a minute and a half. Here we go. Amazing. So that pulse is coming from the fact that the diameter of the bowl here and the diameter of the bowl here are different diameters, so they both produce different frequencies, and those frequencies mix within this bowl and create this what I call monophonic binaural beat, 2 tones mixing within a single sound source and not between 2 speakers. But like I said before, we have all these sophisticated brain mapping computers and EEG to see what different states of consciousness look like. And we can see that different states in the mind have specific brain frequencies and, associated with them, and even where those brain frequencies are located in the cortex with these different kind of conditions, different kind of states of mind. There was a British EEG researcher, C. Maxwell Cade, who did extensive researches with consciousness, looking for what does enlightenment look like. And he saw this pattern show up so many times, he called it the awakened mind pattern, which was basically a pattern of interrelationships among all kinds of different brain frequencies all going at the same time, which is really how the brain works. But one thing you see here is that right and left hemispheres are synchronized. Right hemisphere, left hemisphere, synchronized. Maximum amplitudes in alpha, theta. My institute, the Center for Neuroacoustic Research, we've identified 21 different brain states at this point that we work with clinically and with advanced sort of high-tech meditation entrainment. The basic 4 that I learned in school was beta, alpha, theta, delta, and the total range of frequencies is 0.5 hertz to 30 hertz. 30 hertz has now been officially extended to 38 hertz in high beta, with the discovery of gamma back in the late 80s. Gamma at 40 hertz frequency, and they also discovered 100 and 200 hertz at that time. They had to find this with open brain surgery with EEG electrodes right on the brain to pick this up, and all these higher frequencies. I discovered below delta brain activity in 1989, where I was hooking every patient up to EEG equipment to research this brain entrainment and synchronicity of the hemispheres phenomenon. I noticed frequencies below 0.5 hertz. I called it epsilon, the next Greek letter down from delta. So this, 1 hertz delta is 1 brain pulse every second. 0.5 is 1 pulse every 2 seconds. Epsilon 1 would be 1 pulse every 4 seconds. Epsilon 2, 1 pulse every 8 seconds. 2001, they discovered default mode network using fMRI machines at extremely slow frequencies of 1 pulse every 10 seconds to 1 pulse every 20 seconds. And our current research over the last 10 years has been frequencies below that. I'm calling them iota. These are experimental, extremely slow brain frequencies that appear to synchronize up with the sort of respiratory pattern of plants and trees and things like that. We also pioneered the work with borderline states. This borderline state of beta alpha, one of my news feeds showed articles about prodigy kids with extreme high IQs who are graduating from Harvard at 12. EEG research into those kids showed maximum brain activity at the borderline between beta and alpha. Beta is cognitive awake left hemisphere type of linear thinking, goal-oriented, task-oriented. Alpha is internalized mental state, holographic mind, peripheral vision, no single focus on a holographic whole sort of thing. You can either do one or the other, but you can't do both at the same time. And most of the reason is because you don't have enough brain processing power to hold both those at the same moment. But high IQ kids seem to be able to do that. And high IQ kids exhibit pretty much what they found in Einstein's brain. 35% heavier and denser brain, not with neurons, but with neuron connections between neurons. More networking, higher IQ, more brain processing power. And so I started exploring the beta alpha borderline. In training to this borderline, where high IQ tends to happen, helps to grow new pathways and can increase your IQ. And that began an exploration of all these other borderline states. Alpha theta, where the Schumann resonance is. Theta delta, where long-term memory, the doorway to your long-term memory happens. So boosting education and memory and learning happens here. Delta epsilon is physical is delta and metaphysical is epsilon. People, when I saw this below delta brain activity happening in 1989 with patients with EEG, everyone got up with a story, out of the body story, or a precognitive story, or a spiritual revelation or epiphany story. So I started equating this metaphysical kind of experiences with this epsilon brain activity. And so the borderline would be 1 foot in the physical, 1 foot in the metaphysical. This is where you get to see the metaphysical allegory and meanings of physical phenomena, of my pains or my symptoms. What's the metaphysical meaning of those things? All of us begin here. The ultimate primordial sound down here is the womb. We all start out the same. At 16 to 24 weeks, all 5 senses wake up, but I'm in the dark, so the eyes don't work, and my nose and mouth are filled with fluid, amniotic fluid, so those aren't working. But sound travels through water 5 times better than air, so our total experience in the 9 months of the womb was a sound vibrational experience. Those vibration frequencies amplified through the water into my ears and into my vibration network. No wonder sound is the most powerful tool. It's the first thing any of us ever experienced. It was the only thing we experienced for the whole 9 months in the womb. So it's got deep roots in the deepest part of my unconscious mind. Very powerful tool for reaching that part, the unsullied part of me, the original essence of who I am. Before language, before civilization, before any of that, I was just me. And who that person is still me. I'm still down in there. I'm still there. Except I've got a big long story, and I've got gray hair now. But each one of us, at the core of our essential nature, is the same person that was in the womb, with added on experiences and traumas and all the rest of the things that have been added onto us. But deep down inside, we're still the same person we were. Still the same essential nature, stamped here with a purpose and unique sets of talents that we're here for. And, from all of the cultures on earth and the religious traditions, the purpose of life is to find out the purpose of life and then do it. Step into it. Make it happen. When we take human voices speaking and you speed it up, it starts to sound like birds. And if you speed it up more, it sounds like crickets. If you speed it up more, it sounds like dolphins. And dolphins slow down, sound like people singing. Crickets slow down, sound like birds. Birds slow down, sound like dolphins. All of this stuff is like Jung's collective unconscious on blueprint paper or something. So that I'd call that sort of secondary order primordial sound. Still something deep is waking up to these nature sounds, disguised so that only my subconscious can recognize it. And all of that sounds like these recordings came back from space, for God's sake. NASA, this project with Voyager 1 and 2, with these long steel poles here were the plasma wave recorders. And what they're recording is interactions between the solar wind striking the ionosphere and making these ions vibrate. And they vibrate exactly within the range of human hearing, 20 to 20,000 hertz. So yeah, the scientists are interested in finding out what the heck is going on out there. So Voyager comes along and makes these recordings and sends them back. And then those guys, approach me because I'm the weirdo sound guy doing all this crazy research into the mind and the subconscious. And the very first recording that they brought to me back in 1989, 1990, was on an audio cassette tape, because that's before CDs. The first one they brought back was from the rings of Uranus. Uranus is the only planet with vertical rings. And if you want to put your headphones on, this is pretty astounding. Recordings from space. This is what the rings of Uranus sounds like. That is a powerful meditation tool. And is it just me? But does that sound like Tibetan bowls to anybody? And I swear this came to me a week after I was messing around with taking recordings of Tibetan bowls and playing them as symphonies and slowing them down and slowing them down. This sounds like the slowed down Tibetan bowls stuff. Once again, you get recordings from Jupiter and Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune and their moons and some of their wings. And what do they sound like? They sound like dolphins and whales and choirs singing and voices and Tibetan bowls and monks chanting. It's like, wow. It sounds like the nature sounds slowed down. They all start to sound like each other. Human voice speaking, speeded up, sound like birds and crickets. And that's what I call primordial sounds. And when you use that in a clinical setting, you have the possibility of using those tools to awaken a deep place in the unconscious mind that recognizes those sounds, subconscious pattern recognition, to dig deep and reveal some deep part of me as a clinical tool. And not only that, but as a meditation tool. So when I played the Tibetan bowls, you could hear that I had some nature sounds there. And those nature sounds were all slowed down, and some of them were slowed down so much that it awakens a deeper part of your unconscious mind that only that part can recognize it. All mixed up with, these Tibetan bowls, and, I did projects with, sounds from space that sound like dolphins and crickets and whales and waves and ocean, and mix that with ocean and waves and crickets and whales, real sounds, and mix it all together so you couldn't tell which was what. And that's a very powerful tool, relaxation meditation tool. The sort of cutting edge where this goes is technology now. We're taking technology. In this case, I have this special heart rate variability monitor that measures heart information and displays it in such a way that you can see the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system live. And this is the master control of all systems in your body. Sympathetic is blue, parasympathetic is green. And when you lay down on your back, hooked up to this device, you should see a little bit of sympathetic tone in place because of gravity pulling the blood out of your head, and your body responds to that. But that should collapse down in 3 minutes to this zero stress zone, where neither the sympathetic nor the sympathetic are mobilizing your energy for some purpose. And what I've seen clinically is that nobody has a normal system. Everybody is running a fight or flight response all the time. It never goes here for most people. And that's not good, because when that's in place, this homeostasis zone of zero stress in your system is a requirement for healing. Survival needs have to be met. This pushes in. If sympathetic turns on, I feel threatened, it turns on, it mobilizes all my energy out of that reservoir for a purpose. When it's over, it comes back. Energy comes back. I'm working on my maintenance list of 1,000 things to do. If I eat food and my parasympathetic turns on and mobilizes my energy out of the pool to digest my food and eliminate toxins, when that's over, it's back. Energy comes back, I'm working on my list. But if this is abandoned forever because I'm stuck in a fight or flight response, I can't heal. I can't rebuild my tissues. I'm burning up all my resources. And that, in my opinion, is the ultimate cause of disease. The system has been removed from its healing program and its rebuilding of tissue program, and it can't do its job. My personal innovation is, if I see that situation where this is stuck on, I can expose you to a whole series of different sound frequencies that are very precisely tuned until I can find a sound frequency that makes this happen, that forces the system to hit the reset button. And then we play that frequency and various octaves of that frequency to reinstate this, to retrain the autonomic nervous system to this state. And there's ramifications of that, because back to the law of octaves with the wine glass, once I ping the wine glass and I hear that note, any octave will also work. And that's the same thing with your body. If I find a frequency that makes this happen to your autonomic nervous system and returns the system to normal so it can start untangling itself from the inside, every octave of that tone theoretically should work. And in your body, the octaves that are at the high end of my vibration sense network, 0.3 to 500 hertz, up towards the top of that, I feel it in my skin. If I drop the octave through the sound table, I feel it in my muscles. Different body density responds to a different frequency range. Another octave down activates discs and tendons and ligaments. Another octave down is a bone conduction octave. Another octave down is a fluid conduction octave, so I can push fluids with pressure waves, sound pressure waves, cardiovascular fluids, cerebral spinal fluids for craniosacral work, lymphatic fluids for an acoustic version of a lymphatic massage. Frequencies, octaves below that, below hearing, still frequencies there, but it's not sound anymore once it's below 20 hertz. Those are brain frequencies. Beta, alpha, theta, delta, epsilon, gamma, all the rest are now precise and exact brain frequencies, accurate to a couple of decimal points, because they're all exact octaves of the tone that makes this balance happen. And theoretically, any of those should work. So if I use brain entrainment to entrain your brainwaves to any of those octave brain states that we identify, when you put those headphones on and you listen to that, even if there's no sound coming through the table, we cause this to happen by picking the lock of a neural program. And now we can direct where the healing is going to go, because if we direct it into alpha, we're healing the mind. If we direct it into theta, we're healing the emotions. Emotions get healed in dreaming, sleep, theta. Delta is where the physical body heals at night, so we can direct the brain entrainment to delta, and we can direct physical healing or emotional healing or mental healing, metaphysical healing. All these different brain states become open to us to explore scientifically in a clinical setting, to direct precisely and exactly where the healing is going to go. So if I'm a psychiatrist or a psychologist and I'm using the system, when I get to the theta frequency, I'm going to be able to more easily align with a program your brain is already running to heal your emotions, so that work becomes sort of easier now. And when we get into the bigger concept of now we're going to use these brain entrainment frequencies and this balancing of the system to dig to the deepest part of my personal experience for meditation. Now we have the possibility of graduating all of this into a new spectacular sort of high-tech Star Trek meditation, where we're now bringing all of the tools that we have in the 21st century to bear, with precision of measuring tools for EEG and heart rate variability to see what's going on the inside, classic pictures of high-level meditators and what that looks like on the inside for them, and train us to that pattern so that we can skip a whole bunch of superfluous steps of struggling to figure out what we're supposed to do. We can now make it happen. So it becomes obvious what to do because you're in it, you're doing it. It's bringing the horse to the water. You can't make the horse drink, but if the reason you're bringing the horse to the water because it's thirsty, then you stack the deck in your favor for making a powerful new sort of 21st century meditation technique that's never been seen before. It's been used. That's what this is, brain entrainment. It's just with a precision of tools that we've never had before, and it's the striving human beings have always been trying to do. It's what the universe itself is trying to do with coupled oscillators. We're always trying to cut corners. We're always trying to figure out better ways of getting the job done with the least amount of energy expended, and that's what this is all about, is high-tech levels of meditation. Is not machines doing your meditation for you, it's machines aligning your system so that your ability to access that deeper level of self-awareness becomes easier and more possible. So with that said, I hope you understand a little bit more about how these soundtracks on the market are working and what binaural beats are kind of all about and why it's doing something to the brain. We're commandeering inborn processes in the brain that sort of run themselves and are always looking. We're taking how the body already works and we're working with that to push the envelope of what we're trying to achieve anyhow. So with that said, thank you all very much for your time, and it's been enjoyable being here with you. So thank you all very much. And I think we're turning this back over to the master of ceremonies of all.
Wait, take off your original sound.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah.
Excellent. Wow. Uh, so inspiring. I've got a few questions, probably about 48, but I'll try to make them short. um, so this is first is just a comment. Isn't it amazing that quantum physics was discovered years ago, and it still has not been incorporated into traditional medicine at all? It's
It's
just bizarre.
it's a different model. I spent my life banging on that door. I finally gave it up. There's, because there's the human condition. If you spent 12 years going to school and tons of money, and now you've gone through all the internships and you're locked into this system, you're locked into a belief system
Right.
that diseases sort of, I don't know, arrive from Venus. I mean, there's no training that there's an inherent wisdom in the body that knows how to heal itself. That is not taught in medical school.
Right.
The body is a stupid lump of meat that we in the great white lab coats, we are here to help the body do what it can't do, heal itself. And
Right.
that's
Or
from
the fact that intention is proven in many scientific experiments to do very specific things. Like last year, I had a blood clot from my hip to my ankle,
ouch. That's not good.
and now it's completely gone.
And
Completely gone.
and what did you do?
I immediately, when the doctor said the diagnosis, I immediately went, no. Because they said there's a 70% chance you'll die from this. No, no, no. And I was very disciplined to hold that energy that it will be gone. It will be gone. Done deal. Done deal. Because the second you go into that fear, it's exactly what you were saying in your presentation. It's so critical. That's what should be taught. It's second anybody gets a diagnosis. Okay, go to the intention room now.
Intention, yeah, like that. Not detention, but intention.
right. Okay, so I got random questions from your presentation. Here's another one. It's interesting is I started thinking about the different speed of sound in materials, which means that when you place sound into the body, it's going to change its speed as it goes through the fluids and the physical parts, right? Which means it's going to change its frequency. And I started thinking about that musical interval relationship between sound in air, sound in water, and sound in materials is a really important musical interval relationship because that's what's actually going to be happening in the body. And so there's a more of a calculation other than just one frequency.
Yeah, there's a secondary thing that isn't sort of generally recognized. The structure of how the body's put together from a fluid standpoint. So 70% water, intracellular, extracellular fluid is not just water, it's a colloidal fluid, it's body water, it's organic, physical water. And it takes into account the unbelievable properties of the molecule of water itself, special in the whole universe. It has the ability, it's got a tetrahedral structure which gives it positive and negative polarity, and the way it stacks, and the lattice can be distorted and memorize that shape so water can memorize things. The concept that the water can memorize intention is just part of the continuum. It's electromagnetic, it's sound, it's all the other stuff. It's interacting physically, even though you can't see intention. Things happen in your brain waves and your heart field and all the other stuff. But water exists in the biological colloidal state where it's on the razor edge between fluid on this side and a liquid crystal on this side. And what shifts it over to a liquid crystal is the piezoelectric effect. The piezoelectric effect has got to do with how the kind of structures that have piezoelectric effects are basically crystals, any form of crystal. Quartz crystal is a good example. Liquid crystals is similar, except it's a liquid form. So when you have a crystal and you distort its shape, it generates an electrical pulse. That's the piezoelectric effect. So that's how your bones are formed from cartilage. It's how a bone heals. You break your bone, and the bone cells on the edge of the break that have had their cell membranes severely torqued have flipped the polarity on the surface of the membrane to a negative field, attracting positive calcium ions, and that's how the bone is formed. But if we're in the same room together and I'm talking to you, I'm basically blowing air across my vocal cords, creating vibrational frequencies that are shaped in my mouth, and I'm shooting these shaped vibrational packets through air molecules down your ear. But 99.9% of it is hitting your body as an air pressure wavefront that hits your body. And when that wavefront, which is a pressure wave, hits your body, it distorts the cell membranes of your skin and tips the fluid over into a liquid crystal and generates a wave of piezoelectric activity that is in the shape of the sound wave. It's the exact electromagnetic counterpart of the sound wave, which is now hitting the ones next to it and the ones next to it and then the one. So we've got a wave of depolarization of piezoelectric electrical pulses traveling through all your tissues.
Cool.
And your cells are made of, microtubules, and those have a crystalline structure. So by definition, sound through a solid is 5 times better than it is through a fluid. So we've got this wave of electricity passing through the body in the shape of the sound waves.
Right.
We've got both these things interacting at the same time.
Yeah, it seems pretty clear. If you know the basic frequency of sound and it's working, it's going to do its transmutation to the other frequency ranges based on the beat of sound in those fluids or materials, and so it's going to be in relation already. Okay, so another question is, I've been thinking about musical flow between all of these harmonic relationships that you mentioned throughout the body. And it's like the songs playing through the different things, and that's what makes us unique, even though those relationships might be very similar from person to person and a healthy person, right? And so then I start thinking about the melodic progression or even chord progression as these songs play through the brain. The way they change, the way the songs change, and the way the songs change through, in Vedic traditions they even talk about, or Indian traditions, through the day. There's going to be different songs that are playing through the day. So it becomes very complex, and so I've been jumping into that world of complexity, which is a little mind-boggling, but once you know the notes of the parts, then it's just a rhythm of how fast it goes through those notes, right? Then you know the melody.
Yeah, if you take a nice musical piece, a pre-recorded musical piece, and you put it in your recording studio and you slow it down by 3 octaves, it's completely transformed. You don't even recognize it as the same piece. It's like this whole new thing has now happened because the tempos have all shifted and the frequencies have dropped way down. So it's this whole new kind of thing that happens. Speed and variability, and there's a kind of interesting thing in the womb when I'm listening. What did the womb sound like to me when I was in the womb as a fetus, as opposed to an adult on the outside listening with a stethoscope? Because when I'm in the womb and I'm hearing the swishy, watery sounds of the amniotic fluid, and I'm hearing the heartbeat and the respiratory sounds of my mother and the large and small intestinals, gloopy bloopies kind of sounds. And as a sound engineer, I can reconstruct that, and I can do it in 3D. I can have heartbeat and respiration and gloopy bloopies and water sounds and put them in a mix. It didn't sound right when I did that. It's me in the middle of the night, in the middle of a dream, is when the answer drops in and wakes me up. And the answer is that sound waves have size. So if you look behind me there at that grand piano, right? If I hit C sharp in the second octave, the sound wave is 1 foot from peak to peak. And an octave lower than that is 2 feet, an octave lower than that is 4 feet. And the higher I go up the scale, the shorter and shorter and shorter it gets. And my perception of what constitutes low frequency sound, which has a big sound wave, and a high frequency sound that has short little sound waves, is relative to the diameter of my eardrum. So when I'm a fetus in the womb, where my body is this big and my head is this big and my ear is that big and my eardrum is microscopically small, the sound of my mother's heartbeat, which is about this big, the size of your two fists together, the sound of that has got size, and the size of is in relation to a microscopic size eardrum would make that sound seem deep and low and slowed down. My perception as a fetus with all those sounds in that womb scape would all have to be slowed down by a certain number of octaves to represent what it sounded like to me as a fetus.
Cool. Okay, so for shamanic drumming, 5 cycles per second, it's interesting. I've gone to workshops with Horner, and while doing journey work, I went out of my body, and everybody in a room of like 150 people just about went out of their body. I became different animals. I found my guides, they're all sitting there, right? It's like, and so it's interesting. I've always wondered since, right. But it's interesting that same frequency, it's not tuned to the person, the 5 cycles per second, right? It's not tuned to one person. And so it seems like it would be even better if it was tuned to the person, but it works. It seems like it's almost like this archetypal rhythm that works for everybody as opposed to a personal one.
There's a few things going on there. Number one, 80% of the people on the bell curve would respond. 20% of that group would be on the edge of maybe or maybe not responding. At the peak of that bell curve would have the most response, the most body, most mind-blowing. But then you've got a second phenomenon happening. That's the coupled oscillator phenomenon. Because as soon as you've got 80% of the people on the bell curve, up towards the peak of that bell curve, you've got a circle of people that's really responding the most.
It's tuned to them.
And that's creating an oscillation of its own that everybody else is starting to suck into theirs.
Cool.
So the coupled oscillator phenomena is getting everybody involved, even the ones out on the edges. So it's really more like 90-10.
Wow. So now it's like everybody's heart is putting out an electromagnetic field that's actually entraining people more than the sound in a way. I remember going to see Gangaji, who's like really in her home note. She's really peaceful. And I realized that her rhythm and her sound was not mine. And it wasn't everybody's in the room, but everybody in the room was totally, whoa, right, synchronizing to her.
It's why you want to be in the presence of the masters, because you're hoping it'll rub off on you. And rubbing off is this synchronizing coupled oscillator thing that you're timing to them,
It's interesting. Now, the last thing is, it makes me want to map out all the different archetypal frequencies, which would be, the Schumann resonance, frequencies coming off the sun electromagnetically, all the ones that aren't tuned to you versus the ones that are tuned to you, right? And then and I've thought about it a lot, but this is what I find really interesting, is where in the body are the rhythms, where is the system you would think the systems in the body would be separate, the ones that tune to archetypal frequencies versus the ones that are tuning to personal frequencies. But I have no idea. Are they, because they're not really separate, huh? So maybe just lift different levels of the atomic cellular level? What do you think?
I think it's bell curves again.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess theoretically you could say that um, there's a master fundamental resonant frequency in the center of the mind of the infinite spirit, generates all reality, and everything in reality is nothing but harmonics and overtones of that fundamental tone. So I might be some distant harmonic of this fundamental frequency in the universe that everything spins from. So I
Mm.
have, so I'm locked into a massive, beautiful master chord where all the harmonics relate to each other. They might be.
Right. But here's the problem. What if what if God's frequency and your frequency create a bad chord? Right? A dissonant chord. Well, it's like it kind of sucks, doesn't it?
And God kicks you out of heaven, and you travel to the most distant part of the universe and set
But it
up.
doesn't suck. It never sucks. I mean, God's frequency and your frequency, even if they're a dissonant chord, they're always perfect, right?
It all works out in time. So, for instance, this thing is going to morph and morph and morph, and it's going to go through a bunch of different perturbations and balances and perturbations and balances, and it finally reaches the perfection point. But from the standpoint of the universe, these are like eons long periods.
Mm-hmm.
And here we are with a little lifespan of 80 years stuck in the middle of here, and we think the whole thing is disturbed.
Mm-hmm. I think I got it. I think there are different systems. Like God is coming into our etheric, our astral body. The whole quantum realm, maybe. And but the physical body is based on the heart rhythm and the different rhythms all synchronized in the body, and those are somewhat different systems. One's more 3D, and one's more 5D, right? It's kind of the way I'm starting to think about it.
Well, if we're all obeying the same law of coupled oscillators, and all of our biological individual systems are looking for the most dominant pulse to tie myself to save energy in my personal realm, my localized effects of what I'm timing to might be different than yours. I'm down here in San Diego, you're up there in San Francisco or something, and influence is going to be different, but there's deeper cosmic influences that will always be the same: the sun and the moon,
Right, right,
planets, and those are going to supersede. There's going to be rhythms within rhythms within rhythms that I'm
right, right.
timing myself to all at the same time.
One of our students did their final paper on the Schumann resonance, and there's a research project where they play the Schumann resonance to a heart of a rat, and it actually makes the rat's heart beat stronger every time, which is more of an archetypal frequency that you would think that would extrapolate. Hopefully, extrapolates to us. I would bet, right? So that's a frequency at a certain note, which is actually going to be different than your note of your system that you find, right?
Yeah, well, I think all biological life forms on Earth have a natural entrainment to the electromagnetic frequencies in the ionosphere of the Schumann resonance, the bounce pattern of electricity from the Earth's surface to the inner
It's
surface ionosphere. So that resonance of electricity is driving our electrical system like an antenna.
the last thing you said in your presentation is really cool, and that is that the technology is a way of training us into these higher, teaching us how to access these higher states as well. I was talking to my friend last month, and I thought, you know, we're all disabled. We're all disabled, right? It's like we need help to really get back to this connection that is the core of who we are, which is source and this higher energy of all.
Cutting through. There was a great book by Trungpa Rinpoche, Cutting Through Material Spiritualism, or Spiritual Materialism, that's what he called it, Spiritual Materialism. You have to be careful that your ego doesn't take the fact that you're spiritual and make you better than somebody else.
Right, Right. Yeah.
Right.
That's Alice Bailey calls it.
When Gurdjieff came back in the 20s, he was the first mystics to come back with the secrets from the East. And he said, blessed is he who is completely asleep, and blessed is he who is totally awake, but woe to the rest of us who have our butt hanging between two bar stools. Once you've left the asleep bar stool, you're on your way, and if you can't stop, because if you stop, gravity pulls your butt down to the floor and you get injured. So once you make that journey, there's no going back. It's like you can't go back to sleep once you've woken up a little bit.
Right, right. Cool. Well, what a pleasure. It's always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
We have to do this, you and me, more than just the excuse of this thing that we're doing.
Yeah, I'm really excited to get together with you and a couple others and figure out the entire harmonic relationship of every cell and every part of the body and there is using AI. I think that's where we're headed.
Then we just go back home, right?
Right. Nothing else to do but be happy.
Thank you all. Thank you so much. Anytime, call on me. I'll be here.